Hi everyone, this is Kerim Baran of SolarAcademy. Today I'm here with Alex Comeau, Enterprise Account Manager at Dynapower. And we are going to talk about hydrogen energy, hydrogen fuel cell solutions, and how hydrogen or DC coupled solar solutions work around hydrogen. But before we get into that topic, Alex, I would like to ask you a little bit about your background, how you ended up at Dynapower or in this field. Go as far back as you like, middle school, high school, college, early career, and
Sure.
give us a little insight into your background and how you ended up in this really intriguing position at Dynapower.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Thank you for the opportunity. I think just going back a few years, I was working in a project management role at a nonprofit and had an opportunity to go to grad school for public administration. I thought I was going to be, serving a greater purpose, working for the government and really doing some direct kind of work there. And along the way, I got into finance and budgeting and really saw a big opportunity in the renewable energy, kind of clean energy industry. And so that's really fascinating. Like I don't understand electricity at all, but there's solar panels everywhere. And it's a really exciting place to be. So I moved back to an area I grew up in upstate New York and Vermont. And there's a company I now work for, Dynapower, you can see behind me. We've got about 200 employees and we've been in the area for 30 years. The company's been around for about 60. And so it was a company that I had some personal connections to, and an opportunity came up where they needed some support on the sales side. And it's been a really great fit ever since.
Nice. And so you said company has been around for 30, 60 years. I remember from our previous solar conversation that we did with Dynapower that the company is part of Sensata Technologies, or I guess they merged a while ago. And
That's right.
the parent company is 6,000 or so employees, if I remember correctly.
That's
And
right.
Dynapower is the power conversion experts division within Sensata, I guess. Is that a right way to explain that?
Exactly. Yeah, we started as kind of a company supporting the automobile industry, doing rectifiers for chrome plating. So, you got to get that bumper plated. We're going to provide the power supply for that bath to do the chrome plating. So
Mm-hmm.
the company was formed in Michigan, and then about 30 years ago, we moved to Vermont, again where I live, and we've been doing power conversion ever since. So that's the 60-year history. And about 2 years ago, we joined with Sensata. They purchased our company, and we're kind of the front of the show for them for electrification at a really large kind of utility scale.
Got it. And today we're going to talk about Dynapower's power conversion solutions around hydrogen. So I recently learned my background is more in solar. I did not really know about much about hydrogen and how that relates to energy. But there are essentially two different markets around hydrogen, and they're kind of like the same process backwards. Is that a good way to explain it, or perhaps you can explain it
Yeah,
better than me?
sure. I
Yeah,
can I can elaborate on that a little bit. I think maybe as a touch point, I think solar is a great place to start. Right, we
yeah.
making power conversion systems. We've been doing rectifiers for 60 years, and about
Mhm.
20 years ago, we started taking that experience and knowledge and applying it into battery energy storage systems and saying, okay, we can do the bidirectional inverter. So the rectification and the inversion of AC to DC and back for battery energy storage applications. So
So
that kind
this
of
is a utility scale, I assume, right? Or
that's
not for
correct.
homes, because we're just getting bi-directional stuff at homes just about
Right.
now.
No.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're all at three-phase power,
yeah.
hundreds of kilowatts to megawatt scale. Definitely, that industrial, commercial and industrial background of our company,
Right.
that was kind of the
Yeah.
market we wanted to focus on. But so that's kind of where we overlap with solar a little bit, was the battery energy storage. And obviously
Hmm.
we know how BESS has really boomed in the stationary storage world. So when it comes to hydrogen, we take that same technology basis, right? The power conversion system, and there's two different applications. So we see it on both ends of the hydrogen value chain. There's hydrogen production, which for us just means making green or renewable hydrogen with little to no carbon footprint through the process of electrolysis, and skipping a whole bunch of electrochemistry. I think it's suffice to say that we need very large power rectification generally. So converting AC currents up to 50,000 amp units and higher. So really massive power electronics to produce hydrogen, clean hydrogen. And then On the other end of that market, there's the demand side. So the demand for hydrogen, you can use it in applications where you're taking the hydrogen molecules and you're essentially converting back to electricity. In that way,
And
you can
that's
think of
you
it
do
as a
that with the fuel cells.
exactly the
You
fuel
feed
cell
them through the
application.
fuel cells. Yeah.
So we play on both ends of that spectrum. I think we'll talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, got it. So, and the part that is more relevant to the world of solar and battery and renewable energy in that sense is probably the part that is taking as most people know, like in solar production, especially during midday hours, there's a ton of extra lost electrons in a way because you're producing so much and you're kind of over that at the
Right.
top of the bell curve.
You're
Over
curtailing whatever is
Yeah.
beyond your inverter capacity or your interconnection. Exactly.
And that's essentially free energy not being used anywhere. So, and I guess one of those uses, and I've heard many creative uses of that from Bitcoin mining to many other things. One of that is to take that extra energy and use that in that electrolysis process to generate the hydrogen molecules, which then can be used for almost like a battery.
Yeah, certainly.
And
And then there's a whole set of market conditions where hydrogen is needed, right? So it can be used in fuel cells, as we mentioned, or directly in industrial processes. But there may be
yeah.
customers who are willing to pay for hydrogen that's generated from solar electricity, to your point, knowing that it's a renewable resource, right? So there may be a green premium that you can capture selling that hydrogen to certain customers.
And if you want, you can take that same exact hydrogen you just produced and feed it through a fuel cell and then generate electrons again. So depending on the context and location and pricing of these different inputs and outputs,
Right.
you can make many different use cases. So with that as the background, where do you guys see yourselves being really active right now in the hydrogen market?
Yeah, certainly. Thanks for asking. It's
Yeah,
like everything, it's rapidly changing and it's a pretty exciting place to be. I think there's a
yeah,
lot of technology improvement every year. As I mentioned, we have a background in industrial scale rectification. So I think for us, our primary focus is really on the sort of massive utility scale electrolysis sites where we're talking hundreds of megawatts of hydrogen electrolysis.
hmm
So in those applications, we've got a really large containerized solution. Like I said before, we can get up to 50, 60,000 amps in a single unit. And generally, depending on the application, the voltages can vary, but we'll say 3 to 500 volts DC. And so we're selling multiples of those units into these really massive sites. And a lot of these sites have their own power purchase agreements with solar arrays, or they'll be installing solar and wind at the same time as the electrolysis site. So it's what I would really describe as a utility scale hydrogen production kind of market.
got it. And are you able to talk about like who are some of your customers that use
Yeah,
this? And yeah,
absolutely. So we work with a number of the leading electrolyzer manufacturers. I think at this point, the technology is changing so rapidly that the scope of the project changes from each project. But generally speaking, there's a number of leading technology companies. One of our biggest projects is the ACES project in Delta, Utah, and that's a 220 megawatt hydrogen production site. That particular project is using Hydrogen Pro electrolyzers. And we did provide the full medium voltage rectification power supply for those. So that's 220 megawatts of power supply. That project's being commissioned kind of as we speak, and it really will be the biggest hydrogen production plant via electrolysis in North America when that goes online. So it's really a test case for a lot of the industry and how to get to this massive scale.
and this production facility
Yeah.
is located next to a large solar farm in that case. Is that
It's
right?
being fed by a solar farm. And actually, the really interesting thing, Kerim,
Yeah.
is they're above a salt cavern. So what they're doing is they're producing hydrogen and they're pumping it into the ground and they're storing it below ground in these salt caverns, much like they do with methane or natural gas in other parts of the Gulf Coast. So they're really taking the hydrogen, they're taking the solar production in the summer in Utah, right? A sunny
Yeah.
state last time I was there, and storing it in the form of a molecule underground for an interseasonal battery, essentially. So taking
Yeah.
excess solar energy and storing it for use in the fall and winter, really to
Yeah.
support the greater California, kind of Southern California grid.
Wow. And then that hydrogen that's stored
Yeah,
is
underground.
taken out and used later for what purposes and where?
They're actually going to be, well, they are distributing it. They have some, some off takers, let's say steel mills who maybe need hydrogen for their processes. But I think the primary use for that hydrogen is to be burned in a turbine and produce electricity.
Like a natural gas turbine. I mean,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yep.
got it. And let's also talk about this process of how, I guess, you're feeding electricity, excess
Mhm.
electricity from, midday hours of a powerful solar plant, utility scale solar plant. And then how does that process work? At the end, like you take water and split it, and you get the H2O split into with and then coupled with the electrons, and then you get the hydrogen and then oxygen, I guess, right? Is that kind of
Yeah. So if you want to think
because
about
is
it,
it
it's kind of like a battery, right? So there's an arrangement of cells
yeah,
within the electrolyzer, and the inputs are, as you said, water and electricity. So you take
yeah,
water, you put it into the input side of this battery, we'll call it, and you zap the water with electricity just to keep it really simple. We're zapping things, and as you said, it passes through a membrane. There's an anode and a cathode, and the hydrogen atoms are split off of the oxygen atom in the molecule, and we get hydrogen on the other side, right? So that's usually a very pure form of hydrogen that may need a little bit more refinement or pressurization depending on the specific electrolyzer and the specs for that system. But generally, these systems are producing a high quality, pure hydrogen that can be used for, applications like fuel cell cars, right? Like the Mirai.
right,
You could drive away with one of those, right? So that's a little bit of the electrochemical process in making the hydrogen.
yeah,
And then just to turn the coin, if you want to take that same system, essentially run it in the other direction, you have the fuel cell application where you put the hydrogen into the fuel cell, and then it actually is able to produce water as a byproduct and electricity
yeah,
in going through this process in the other direction.
got it. And so in the original process we were talking about, when
Yes.
you take in the water, do you have to be next to a lake or a river or ocean, or can you just take I guess, the humidity in the air and just work it
Right.
off of the air?
Well, so unfortunately, you do need very pure water.
Okay.
So much like our focus is the electricity, right? And there needs to be a high level of control for the electricity. So some of the
Yeah.
things we talk about often are really varying the voltages and the current requirements for the stacks, depending on the available electricity, depending on how they want to run the system. Also, what the footprint of that interconnection is with the utility, right? And in our base case, the large site we mentioned earlier, the ACES site, that is connected to the local grid. So there's a lot of concern from the utility about what the impact of running 220 megawatts is, right? So we have
Sure.
to maintain the system and ensure that our footprint on the grid is appropriate and minimal, acceptable to the operator, while at the same time providing a high quality electricity output. And in that way, you need high quality water as well. But
Yeah.
I think the blue sky opportunities here with hydrogen are that we can produce hydrogen with, again, a low or no cost carbon cost in many places where they may not have great resources like natural gas available. So it can be very geographically dependent, right? We want a lot of solar or wind to provide the
Sure.
electrons for the process,
Yeah.
but then you can create this molecule which has some other uses that unlock some opportunities that aren't necessarily available with just straight electrification or batteries.
Yeah. So, and where do you get the pure water from? Like in Utah, I guess from the lake, or
Yeah,
is
from
it
lakes, and there's
underwater?
a lot of times there's agreements with local water treatment facilities, right, or towns and cities that have water treatment plants. So it is
Yeah.
there's usually water purification processes on site to take high quality water and convert it into extremely pure water. Again,
Yeah.
because we're putting it into this electrochemical process, any impurities add to degradation and system inefficiencies. So you really do need pure water, and that can be a sticking point in the industry.
Got it. Okay. So I guess if we were to talk a little bit about the market dynamics, like, how does Dynapower differentiate itself vis-a-vis its competitors, and what kind of specific applications are you guys more focused on, and where do you find yourself highly differentiated?
Yeah, thank you. Well, we've got a few, I think, really important value adds that we bring to some of our projects. We have a range of rectification technologies that I won't get into because that's not what we're here to talk about. But we've been doing thyristor rectifiers for the full 60 years of our company history, and we have newer IGBT-based conversion technologies, right? That you're going to see in the solar industry, right? So I think there's a lot of comfort in the solar industry because it's always been kind of a new and nascent industry for the last 10 years, 15 years that or longer that we've been in the industry. But for these electrochemical processes, these kind of large scale plants, they have some very, I'll call them conservative customers and owners who are traditional large companies, the Dow Joneses of the world, who have a technology aversion where they want to know that it's a proven technology with a long history, and you're a company who can provide a solution and stand by it, right? So our 60-year lifetime, I think, has given us the ability to say, look, we've got thousands and thousands of applications and projects across the world that are still running. We still support them. And no matter where they are, we're able to provide the right solution for the needs.
Got it. And so as you are creating these like the hydrogen molecules out of this process, we talked about, like, one case is using it as a battery, or almost like a battery for storing power purposes. But there
Right.
must be other uses of this hydrogen as well in the market. And can you tell us a little bit about, like, where is hydrogen being used, and what
Certainly.
what kinds of other new innovative solutions are being developed around this new technology?
Yeah, I think in some ways you could think of hydrogen as being kind of the other side of the bridge when we talk about bridge fuels, right? So if we want to say natural gas is a bridge fuel, hydrogen is kind of on the far end. And so what that means to me is that it's a way to decarbonize some of those sectors and industries that have a really hard time simply electrifying in the way that you can do with my car outside that's an EV, right? So
Yeah.
a good
Or
example.
like an airplane.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yep. So
got
sustainable aviation fuels, many of them are expected to be, and they're in R&D, expected to be using hydrogen and clean hydrogen in this case as a really important feedstock. Additionally, ammonia or fertilizers. One way to decarbonize fertilizers, which are incredibly important worldwide, is to use clean hydrogen from an application like hydrogen electrolysis, which we've been describing.
got it. We also talked a little bit about clean hydrogen versus gray hydrogen. Can you
Yeah.
describe the difference? And
Sure. So there's a few different ways to make hydrogen, right? SME, and there's hydrogen pyrolysis. So there's many different options, and some of those are produce a large carbon footprint. Several companies are out there doing carbon capture with those processes. So there's a whole veritable rainbow of hydrogen colors, right? And you can go look it up, and they'll tell you this means it's hydrogen produced from nuclear. This is hydrogen from solar and wind. This is hydrogen that's being produced as a byproduct of this other process. So in that way, there's a lot of options for existing industries, and hydrogen electrolysis that we've been discussing is really about 1% of the total market share of hydrogen at the time being. And I'll let you in on a secret that's pretty well known. It's 4 times or more expensive than some of the other technologies I just mentioned. So we have a real need to lower our costs. And in one case, that's why we're going to these really large plant sizes, because we're able to scale our product and our outputs and lower our individual costs while the technology readiness improves.
so you said something interesting there. It's, first of all, going back to the clean and the gray. So it's all about the input, not the output. The output is always
It's
the
always
same hydrogen
hydrogen.
molecule.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And so I guess you can make hydrogen even from a coal power plant powered electricity, right?
certainly. Yeah.
Is that done anywhere in the world? I'm just curious.
I don't know that it would be directly, but absolutely there is hydrogen that's being produced from, let's say, just grid power, where grid power is provided by a coal plant. There's no doubt in my mind. Yeah,
You think that that is happening somewhere because
absolutely.
probably because there's some other use of hydrogen nearby somewhere or in that market where it just makes economic sense.
Yeah,
And
in that
yeah,
case, we would be talking about a smaller system. So perhaps you have a stainless steel plant and you need
yeah,
hydrogen for your processes to produce the
got
stainless
it.
steel. You may have your own small hydrogen plant that can
Yeah.
produce just enough hydrogen for your process. And in order to make that via electrolysis, you're just using your grid interconnection because you've got so many megawatts for your plant already. And in that case, you just be, producing your own supply and then creating demand there.
Well, thank you for this intro 101 to hydrogen and also how Dynapower is developing solutions around that. As we come to the end of our conversation, any last thoughts or comments that you would like to share with the audience?
Well, I do have one other project I
Yeah.
really wanted to talk about here, which is a project in India with
Oh
Jindal
yeah.
Steel. And
Hmm.
it's a really exciting project because it uses our utility scale DC to DC converters. So they have their own PV power plant, an array, which
Yeah.
they've then piped directly into their electrolysis stacks, right? So they've taken the DC supply, and rather than converting it to AC and going through the normal inversion and back, they're going
Mhm.
directly DC powered into their plant. And they also have DC-DC converters on a battery energy storage system, all connected on the same DC rail to just support ramping conditions and kind of give the system a little bit more robustness and add to the capacity factor for the whole plant. But that's a really exciting project because as a company, we see our DC-DC converters as really a game changer for hydrogen and a way to simply install a hydrogen production system on an existing array somewhere that is curtailing power, right, where they have free electricity. We can
Yeah.
simply tie in and we don't have to work through some of the large interconnection queues and all the challenges that the industry sees with typical solar arrays.
You mentioned this project is in India, but you can replicate this anywhere else too, right?
Absolutely.
And like, so is this just why is that happening in India but not here in the US?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think in some cases it's a pilot. And again, that stainless steel plant, they have the offtake need, they have their own demand. So they were able
Yeah,
to take a 20-year purchase agreement and really agree to the cost of the hydrogen up front. And so the economics of the project made sense for them in India. I think right now, as that plant gets up to speed and we see more replications of that, we're going to have an easier time making the economic base case to produce that kind of situation somewhere else.
got it. Alex Comeau of Dynapower, thank you very much for sharing all this wisdom and knowledge around hydrogen and DC to DC conversion technologies of Dynapower.
Thanks, Kerim. It's really an honor, and I really appreciate what you're doing. Thank you.